I was 16 years old when my stepfather told me I had 2 hours to get my things and leave. Not because I'd done anything wrong, because he wanted my room for his home office and I was in the way. My mother stood in the kitchen and said nothing, just looked at the floor while he laid down the ultimatum. You're 16, old enough to work, old enough to take care of yourself. We're not responsible for you anymore. Legally, they were wrong. 16 isn't old enough. But I didn't know that then. Didn't know I had rights. Didn't know I could call someone. I just knew I had 2 hours before the locks changed. My name is Danny Ortega. This was 1997 in rural Nebraska. I packed everything I owned into a duffel bag, clothes, a jacket, my grandfather's pocket watch, $53 in cash. That was it. Everything I had in the world fit in one bag. I walked out of that house and didn't look back, had nowhere to go, no relatives who'd take me, no friends whose parents would help. Just me and $53 and a Nebraska winter coming on. I spent the first night in a bus shelter, froze, couldn't sleep, watched the sun come up and tried to figure out what to do next. 16 years old, no high school diploma, no job, no plan, just survive today and figure out tomorrow when it comes. Found work at a truck stop, washing dishes. Owner was a man named Earl, 60-something, Vietnam vet. He looked at me and knew exactly what my situation was. Didn't ask questions. Just said minimum wage, cash paid daily, you can sleep in the storage room if you keep it clean and stay out of sight when health inspectors come around. That storage room became home. 8 by 10 feet, concrete floor, no windows, one bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Boxes of supplies stacked against the walls creating a maze. Toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies, napkins, everything the truck stop needed, but stored out of sight. I made a nest in the corner, with cardboard flattened out as insulation against the cold concrete. A sleeping bag I bought at Goodwill for $12. A pillow I found in a dumpster behind a motel and washed in the truck stop bathroom sink. Not much, not comfortable, but it was warm, it was shelter, it was mine, nobody could take it away. Earl paid me $40 a day, worked 6 days a week, that's $240 a week. I lived on $10 menu at fast food places, die-old bread from the grocery store, peanut butter, ramen noodles, whatever was cheapest, and filled my stomach, saved everything else. $30 times 6 days is $180 a week saved. After 2 months, I had almost $1,500. More money than I'd ever had in my life. But winter was settling in hard. Nebraska winter. The kind that kills people who aren't prepared. That storage room was getting colder. Earl had put a space heater in there for me, but it barely kept up. Some mornings, I'd wake up and see my breath. The concrete floor would be so cold it hurt to stand on it. I'd layer everything I owned and still shiver. Earl was good to me, but I knew it couldn't last forever. Eventually, a health inspector would notice. Eventually, someone would ask questions. Eventually, I'd have to move on. That's when I started thinking about farms, about the fact that farmers had barns. Big insulated barns with heated spaces for animals and equipment. Farms were spread out, rural, nobody checking on them constantly. If I could find somewhere to disappear into, somewhere people wouldn't notice a kid hiding, maybe I could survive until spring, until I turned 17, until I had enough money saved to rent an actual apartment, until I could build something resembling a normal life. I started studying the local newspaper classifieds, looking for patterns, looking for opportunities. That's when I saw the auction notice. Estate sale for a farmer named Walter Morrison. Everything must go. Farm equipment, tools, household items. Saturday morning, at the old Morrison place, 15 miles out of town. Something about that notice felt important. Farm equipment meant tractors. Tractors meant barns. Estate sale meant the farmer had died. Nobody living there. Maybe I could find something. Maybe there was an opportunity I hadn't thought of yet. At minimum, I could see what farms looked like, learn the terrain, figure out possibilities. Saturday morning, I caught a ride to the auction with one of the truck stop regulars, guy named Pete, who drove a gravel truck. Told him I was interested in tools. Half true. Mostly, I just wanted to see the place, see if there was somewhere I could hide, somewhere I could survive winter without freezing to death. The Morrison farm was being liquidated by the county. Old man Walter Morrison had died at 86. No wife, no kids, no family anywhere. The county was selling everything to pay back taxes and settle debts. House, land, equipment, all of it going to the highest bidder. 30 or 40 people there that Saturday morning, mostly farmers looking for deals on equipment. Some antique collectors looking for vintage items. A few dealers who'd buy cheap and resell for profit. I walked around before the auction started, studied the property, to barns, a machine shed, a grain silo. The house itself looked abandoned for months, but the barns were solid, had electricity, had space heaters, had lofts where someone could hide. I started thinking, maybe I could come back here after dark. After everything sold, before the new owners took possession. Hide out for a few weeks. Give myself time to figure out next steps. The auction started at 9. Moved through household items first. Furniture, dishes, books, sold in lots. People buying and hauling away immediately. Then tools, hand tools, power tools, workbenches, everything going cheap because there was so much of it and not enough buyers. Then equipment. This was what most people came for. The tractors, the implements, the machinery that had real value. 3 tractors in various conditions. A 1960s John Deere 4020 that looked maintained and ran well. That went for $850. Good deal for whoever bought it. A 1970s International 1066 that needed work but was salvageable. That went for $1,200. Farmers in the crowd bidding seriously. These were tools they could use. Investments that made sense. Then came the last tractor, a 1947 Farmall H, sitting in the corner of the barn where it had apparently been pushed decades ago and forgotten. Flat tires from years of sitting. Rust covering every surface. Paint faded to barely recognizable red. Bird's nest visible inside the air cleaner housing. Mouse damage on the wiring. Weeds growing up through the cultivator mounted on the rear. Complete basket case. The kind of thing you hauled to scrapyard for the metal value. The auctioneer started the bidding at $200. Generous given the condition. Nobody bid. Not a single hand raised. These were practical farmers who knew junk when they saw it. That tractor wasn't worth the cost of hauling it away. It would take thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours to make it run. Nobody had that kind of time or money for a tractor that old. The auctioneer dropped it to $100. Still nothing. Nobody wanted it. Dropped it to $75. Nothing. The crowd was getting restless. This was the last item. People wanted to go home, get on with their Saturday. $50, the auctioneer finally said, with exasperation in his voice. Someone please give me $50 for this piece of American agricultural history. $50 so we can finish this sale and everyone can go home. I raised my hand. Didn't think about it. Didn't plan it. Just raised my hand because $50 felt like something. Felt like maybe owning something, even something broken and worthless, was better than owning nothing. Maybe because I related to that tractor. Unwanted, forgotten, left to rust, considered worthless. Maybe because I was 16 and desperate and not thinking clearly, sold to the young man for $50. Several people turned to look at me. A few laughed. That kid just bought a tractor that doesn't run and never will for $50. What an idiot. Good luck with that piece of junk, kid. I walked up to the auction table, counted out $50 in small bills, 5 tens, got a bill of sale written in pencil on a carbon form. Now I legally owned a 1947 Farmall H tractor that didn't run and probably never would, and I had no way to move it, no truck, no trailer, no plan. It sat where it was in that barn while the auction crowd dispersed around it, people loading their purchases and leaving. Me standing there wondering what the hell I'd just done. After the auction ended, after most people had left, an older man approached me. He'd been there all morning. I'd noticed him, watched him watching the auction. But he hadn't bid on anything, just observed, studied, evaluated. Now he was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He was probably 6'5", maybe 70, tall, lean, work-worn hands, wearing clean work clothes, had the look of someone who'd spent a lifetime farming. Something about him was different from the other farmers, quieter, more thoughtful, like he was always thinking several steps ahead. "You got a way to move that?" he asked, nodding toward the Farmall. "No, sir." "You got a place to put it if you could move it?" "No, sir." "You know anything about tractors?" "No, sir." He was quiet for a long moment, studying me, reading things I didn't know I was showing. Finally he said, "My name is Frank Kowalski. I farm about 8 miles from here. Been farming this county for 43 years. I've got an empty barn bay where I used to keep equipment I don't use anymore. You can store that tractor there for free if you're willing to work for me on weekends. Learn some things about farming and equipment maintenance, room and board included if you need it." Which I'm guessing you do, based on how you're standing there, trying to figure out your next move. I must have looked shocked. Must have looked like someone had just thrown me a life preserver when I was drowning, because Frank smiled slightly, just a hint of expression on that weathered face, and said, "I've seen that look before, son. Kid with no options, trying to figure out survival. I was you once, long time ago, different circumstances, same desperate energy. You want the help, or not?" "Yes, sir, I want the help. I definitely want the help." "What's your name?" "Danny. Danny Ortega." "How old are you?" "Danny, 16, almost 17. Frank nodded like that confirmed something he'd suspected. "Where are you living?" "Storage room at the truck stop in town." "Your family know where you are?" "Don't have family anymore, or they decided they don't have me. Comes out the same either way." Frank looked at the Farmall, looked at me, looked back at the tractor. Then he said, "Okay, Danny Ortega, let's get this piece of junk loaded up and get you set up properly. Nobody should be living in a storage room at 16. And nobody should own a tractor they can't work on. We'll fix both those problems today." Frank hauled the Farmall to his farm in his pickup truck that afternoon. Had to make 2 trips. First trip for the tractor itself, loaded on a flatbed trailer he borrowed from a neighbor. Second trip for me and my duffel bag. Everything I owned still fit in that one bag. But for the first time in months, I had somewhere to go, somewhere safe, somewhere someone wanted me. Frank's farm was 200 acres. modest by Nebraska's standards, corn and soybeans mostly, some cattle, equipment that was old but maintained, barns that were weathered but solid, the kind of place that had been worked by the same hands for decades. You could see Frank in every corner of it. The careful way things were organized. The practical repairs done with whatever materials were available. The sense that everything had its place and purpose. He showed me the barn bay where the Farmall would live. Concrete floor, good lighting, space heaters mounted on the walls. This bay used to house equipment I've since sold off, Frank explained. Haven't had anything in here for 5 years. Now it's yours to use. We'll work on the tractor every weekend. Teach you what you need to know. Then he showed me the room. Small building attached to the machine shed. Originally built as hired hand quarters back when Frank could afford full-time help. Now it sat empty. He opened the door and I saw what would become home. 12 by 12 feet, insulated walls, a proper bed with a real mattress, a small bathroom with a shower, a space heater that worked, a window that looked out over the fields, electricity, running water, privacy, things I'd taken for granted my whole life until I lost them, things that suddenly felt like incredible luxury. This is yours for as long as you need it, Frank said. No rent, no timeline, you work weekends, you learn, you keep the place clean, that's the deal, and you finish high school. I don't care if you go to the building, or do correspondence, or GED, but you finish. Education matters. Deal, I said. My voice cracked, saying it. I was trying not to cry. 16-year-old kid, trying to act tough. Trying to act like this wasn't the first kindness anyone had shown me in months. Trying to act like I wasn't terrified this was temporary, that it would be taken away. Frank saw right through it. He said, "Danny, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to believe me. This isn't charity. This isn't me being nice. This is an investment. I'm investing in you because I see something, same thing someone once saw in me. You're going to work hard. You're going to learn. You're going to become someone who contributes. And someday, when you're where I am now, you're going to help some other desperate kid figure out survival. That's how this works. That's why I'm doing this. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now get settled. Dinner's at 6. Don't be late. And tomorrow we start on the tractor." That first night in that room, I cried for an hour. Cried from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization that I wasn't going to freeze, wasn't going to starve, had been given a chance I didn't deserve and hadn't earned but desperately needed. Sunday morning, Frank woke me at 6. We ate breakfast together in his farmhouse. Simple meal, eggs, toast, coffee, but we sat at a real table, used real plates, had a conversation like normal people, like I mattered, like I was worth talking to. After breakfast we went to the barn. Frank stood looking at the Farmall for a long time. Finally he said, "This is a 1947 Farmall H 4-cylinder engine, about 25 horsepower, built for small farms, row crop work. Thousands of these were sold. Most are long gone, scrapped, abandoned, forgotten. This one's been sitting here deteriorating for probably 30 years. It's going to take us a long time to make it run, maybe 8 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. You ready to commit to that?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because," I said, trying to find words for something I barely understood myself, "because if we can fix this, if we can make something worthless become valuable again, then maybe I can too. Maybe broken things can be repaired. Maybe forgotten things can matter again." Frank looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "That's the right answer. Let's get started." We worked on that Farmall every weekend for the next 9 months. 8 to 10 hours Each Saturday and Sunday. Frank teaching, me learning. Breaking down the process into manageable steps. First month we just cleaned. Pressure washed the entire tractor, removed decades of dirt and grime and rust, scraped, scrubbed, wire brushed, got down to bare metal in places. Frank said you can't diagnose problems if you can't see what you're working with. Cleaning is the foundation of everything. Second month, we started disassembly. Pulled the hood, removed the fuel tank, disconnected the wiring, unbolted the seat, drained every fluid, documenting everything, taking photographs, making notes. Frank taught me to be methodical, organized, to label parts, to store hardware properly, to treat this like surgery, careful, deliberate, respectful of what we were working on. Third month, we pulled the engine. Heavy work, needed a hoist, needed careful leverage. Frank showed me how to support weight properly, how to disconnect everything that needed disconnecting, how to lift it clear without damaging anything. That engine came out and got set on a stand. Now we could really see what we were dealing with. The engine was seized, pistons frozen in the cylinders from decades of moisture and corrosion. Frank taught me how to free it, how to soak it with penetrating oil, how to carefully apply leverage without breaking anything, how to be patient, how to celebrate when it finally moved. Tiny movements, millimeters, then inches, then finally freed completely. Fourth month, we disassembled the engine. Every bolt, every component, spread out on a clean workbench. Frank, teaching the name of every part, the function of every piece, how they all worked together, the genius of the engineering, the simplicity of the design. 4 cylinders, pushrods, valves, magneto-ignition, carburetor, simple enough to understand, complex enough to be fascinating. Fifth month, we started rebuild, ordered parts from specialty suppliers, gaskets, bearings, piston rings, valves, everything that was worn beyond salvage. Frank taught me how to read micrometers, how to measure tolerances, how to understand when something needed replacing versus when it could be reused, how to make judgment calls based on engineering specifications and practical experience. Sixth and seventh months were reassembly, putting the engine back together, torquing bolts to spec, adjusting valve lash, setting timing, installing the carburetor. Frank would explain each step, then watch me do it, correct me when I was wrong, encourage me when I got frustrated, teach me that mistakes were part of learning, that perfection wasn't the goal, understanding was the goal. Eighth month, we reinstalled the engine, reconnected everything, wiring, fuel lines, throttle linkages, clutch, transmission, all of it coming back together. The tractor starting to look like a tractor again instead of a pile of parts. April of 1998, 9 months after I bought it for $50, we were ready to try starting it. Frank had me do the honors, set the choke, prime the fuel system, turn the key, push the starter button. The engine cranked slowly, once, twice, 3 times, then it caught, 1 cylinder fired, then another. Black smoke poured out the exhaust. The engine ran rough, but it ran. That 1947 Farmall H was running for the first time in decades. Frank stood there watching it with his arms crossed, smiling that slight smile he did, not saying anything, just watching this kid he'd taken in bring a forgotten machine back to life. I stood there, crying, couldn't help it. This broken piece of junk that nobody wanted had become a running tractor, proof that broken things could be fixed, that worthless things could have value, that I could learn, could build, could accomplish something meaningful. Frank let me cry, didn't make fun of it, didn't tell me to be tough, Just let me have that moment. Finally he said, "You did good, Danny. Real good. That tractor runs because you put in the work, because you didn't quit, because you learned. You should be proud." "I am," I said. "But I couldn't have done it without you teaching me." "That's the point," Frank said. "Nobody does anything alone. We all need teachers. We all need people who invest in us. I'm teaching you, but someday you'll teach someone else. That's how knowledge multiplies. That's how we build things that last. Not through individual achievement, through chains of people helping people." Frank let me keep living in that room. Let me keep working. Paid me a small wage in addition to room and board. I saved everything. Kept working at the truck stop during the week. Kept learning farming on weekends. Kept fixing equipment. Other farmers started hearing about the kid who'd restored that old Farmall, started bringing me broken equipment. Could I fix this? What would I charge? I started doing repair work. Started building a reputation. Started actually making money. By 18, I had my GED. By 19, I had enough saved to rent a small shop in town. By 20, I was running a full-time agricultural repair business. By 22, I'd saved enough to buy Frank's farm when he retired. He sold it to me at a price I could actually afford because he said I'd earned it. Said he'd rather see the farm go to someone who understood work than sell it to the highest bidder who'd never appreciate it. But that's not the important part. The important part is what happened next. That first winter in my repair shop, a kid showed up, 15 years old, sleeping in an abandoned building, hungry, desperate, asked if I needed help, said he'd work for food. I saw myself, saw who I'd been, saw someone who needed what Frank had given me, so I gave him a job, gave him a place to sleep above the shop, gave him a chance. His name was Marcus. Over 2 years I taught him everything Frank had taught me. How to repair equipment, how to solve problems, how to build something from nothing. When he turned 18, he went to technical school on a scholarship, became a diesel mechanic. Now runs his own shop 2 towns over. Marcus sent me another kid. This one had been in foster care, aging out of the system with nowhere to go. I hired him, taught him, gave him the same chance Frank gave me, the same chance I gave Marcus. His name was David. He learned fast, worked hard, saved money. Eventually bought his own land, farms now, 500 acres, doing well. And he's taken in 2 kids who needed help, teaching them, giving them chances. That became the pattern. Over 25 years, I've employed 17 kids who had nowhere else to go, kids who'd been kicked out, kids aging out of foster care, kids running from bad situations, kids who needed someone to believe they were worth investing in. I taught them all the same things Frank taught me: work ethic, problem solving, how to turn broken things into valuable things, how to build a life from nothing. 11 of them now own their own businesses. 4 are farmers. 2 are teachers. All of them are giving back, taking in kids who need help, teaching them, continuing the chain. The original Farmall H sits in my shop, restored now, painted, maintained. Doesn't work anymore, but I keep it as a reminder. A $50 tractor that changed everything. Not because of what it was, because of what it represented. Proof that broken things can be fixed, that worthless things can have value, that someone can give you a chance that changes your entire life trajectory. Frank died in 2015. He was 87. I was with him at the end. Last thing he said to me was, "You did good, kid. You took what I gave you and multiplied it." That's all anyone can ask. I think about him every day. Think about the moment he saw a desperate 16-year-old at an auction buying a broken tractor with the last of his money. Think about his decision to help instead of ignoring. Think about how that one decision created a chain reaction that's now affected dozens of lives. That's what the Farmall became. Not just a tractor, but a symbol, a physical representation of the idea that investing in desperate people isn't charity, it's multiplication. Every person you help can help others. Every chance you give creates more chances. Every life you change changes more lives. I'm 43 years old now. I own a successful business. I own the farm Frank sold me. I have savings. I have security. I have a life I could never have imagined at 16 when I was sleeping in a bus shelter wondering if I'd survive winter. But the best thing I own is that chain. 17 kids who became productive adults, who are now helping others, who are creating their own chains, who prove that Frank's investment in one desperate kid buying a $50 tractor wasn't just kindness, it was the most productive investment he ever made. People ask me why I keep doing it, why I keep taking in kids nobody else wants, why I keep teaching instead of just hiring experienced help, why I keep giving chances to people who might disappoint me. I tell them about Frank, about the Farmall, about being 16 with nothing, about someone deciding I was worth the risk. Then I tell them the math. 17 kids I've helped. 11 businesses created. 4 farms operating. 2 teachers educating. Dozens of kids they're now helping. Hundreds of lives improved. All because Frank saw potential in worthless. That's what that $50 Farmall became. Not a tractor, a movement, a philosophy, a chain reaction that's still growing. I was thrown out at 16. I bought an old Farmall for $50 because I had no other options. What it became changed everything. Not just for me, for everyone who came after me, for everyone who comes after them. That's the real value of fixing broken things. Not making them work again. Making people believe broken things can be fixed, including themselves. My name is Danny Ortega. I started with nothing but $53 and desperation. A broken tractor taught me I could build a life. Then it taught me I could help others build theirs. That's what changed everything. Not the tractor, the lesson, the pattern, the multiplication, and it's still multiplying, still growing, still proving that the best investment you can make isn't in equipment or land or buildings. It's in desperate people who need someone to believe they're worth saving. Because saved people save people. Fixed people fixed people, and given people give. That's what a $50 Farmall taught me. That's what it became. That's what changed everything.